11th, 2024 regular board meeting of the Pullman Public Schools Board of Directors. I'd like to begin with the flag salute. So Amanda, would you please lead us in the flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that sounds a lot better when we got a bunch of kids. Okay, and next I'd like to read our land acknowledgement statement. Pullman Public Schools reside on the homelands of the Nimiipuu Nez Perce people. We express our deepest respect for and gratitude towards the original and current stewards of this land, and we acknowledge our role in building mutual respect and connections to support current and future generations. Next, Dr. Maxwell, move to the approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes?
Just one addition to the agenda, and that's a personal service contract, and that should have been notified previously.
Cool.
That's the only change.
I move approval of the agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda. Are there any questions on the motion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes. And next, we'll move to reports, correspondence, and programs. And I'm going to go ahead and move Sunnyside up. So Pam, will you introduce us, please?
Sure. This is Mrs. Emerson, and this is part of Mrs. Emerson's second grade class from last year. And they're going to do a little presentation for you, and Kimmy's going to explain it first.
Okay. So at Sunnyside, we pride ourselves on cultivating a sense of belonging. And I'm part of the DEB community, which is the diversity, equity, and belonging. And we have these school-wide projects that we've done in the past that focus on this theme, such as the cultural boxes that we did last year. You guys remember those? Yeah. The cultural boxes where they all brought in something that represented them. We've done a mobile, the I Have a Dream mobile that we hung up at WSU. We did a huge heart that we did for our lunchroom. And this year we're going to do little hand drawings of ourselves, and we're going to create a world map with the help of Desiree. We're going to do that. But I feel like another great way to feel that sense of belonging is through music and through singing together. So this song, I'm sure a lot of you are going to recognize, it was written in the 60s. It was a plea for peace and equality. And the version that we're going to sing is from Playing for Change, which is an organization that was created to inspire and connect the world through music. So you'll notice, we're going to be able to play the video, you'll see lots of different people, and they went all around the country playing at different schools, and we're going to perform for you tonight, and we also learned it in sign language. So, you guys want to stand up? All right. You got some elbow room?
Sometimes I'm right, but I can be wrong. My own beliefs are in my soul. The butcher, the baker, the drummer and band makes no difference what you find me. And everyday people. There is a blue one that can't accept the green one for living with the family.
Thank you for letting us share.
Thank you for sharing, and thank you all for coming. You did a wonderful job. Oh, yes. Actually, before y'all leave, would you mind just lining up and coming and saying hello? I have a little gift, and we'd like to maybe shake your hands, and then you're free to carry on about your night. So, is that cool?
Hi, thank you. Nice job. Well done.
That was great.
Nice
Thank you.
job. Really
Thank
enjoyed
you for
it. Thank
singing
you.
for us.
Really enjoyed it.
That was great.
Good job, thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Good work.
Good job.
Great job.
Just awesome, you guys.
Really good job.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you for singing to
Very
us.
Boys,
Coming to see
Thank
us.
you for coming.
Nicely done.
thanks.
Thank you for coming.
Did I
Nice
sing
job,
again?
great voice.
Thank you for coming. That
Great
was so
voice.
fun, you guys. I loved it.
Thank you for coming.
You're welcome back. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome job.
And
Thank
one year
you
I'll get
for
to hand you
coming
your
and
diploma.
singing.
Good job.
Congratulations.
Great job.
Congratulations, thank you for
Thank you
coming.
for coming. Y'all did wonderful.
Great job, awesome,
Have a good night, okay?
good job.
Thank you all for coming. Do not feel obligated to stay, though you are welcome to. We'll give everyone a moment to follow. We'll give him one after his ASB presentation. Okay, that was awesome. Next, we'll move on to board reports, and I'll begin with Greg.
Or ASB.
Oh, wait.
Oh, ASB.
Yes, sorry. I'm totally messed up, Connor. ASB, please, come on up. I saw that first bullet and was like, we already did that, right? Like,
Okay. Hi,
hello.
Connor Scholes, and I'm representing ASB again. So over the last 2 weeks, we've been working on trying to get as many people as possible to go to the school football games. And for last Thursday's game, we did a blue out theme, and everyone came wearing blue, and it was really awesome. And we had a ton of different groups represented there. Second, starting tonight, we are starting to plan our part of homecoming, which for us is the hall decorating that we do the week before, and a lip sync that we do at the assembly leading up to homecoming. For the hall decorating this year for homecoming, the theme is seasons, and so all 4 classes have a theme, so summer, spring, fall, and winter. And then, I guess third, we're also looking at doing a trunk or treat with our clubs at the school to really get the community excited and in the Halloween spirit, which that'll happen closer to Halloween though. And then last but not least, our ASB Equity Committee meets weekly after school, and they've been working on trying to get everybody to go to events and clubs, and then also working on having activities at lunch currently, and also some resources for Suicide Prevention Month. I think that's everything.
And just so you're aware, I did ask Connor earlier today to spread the word about our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Task Force, and so he has
Yeah.
kindly agreed to use
Yeah, working on
ASB's, communication platform
Yeah.
to maybe help us spread the word amongst the students, so that was very kind.
Yeah.
Are there any questions for Connor? Connor, I do
busy.
one thing for you. I'm
Do I
gonna
get a
give you
sticker?
okay?
I get a sticker?
Yep, and then yes, you're free to go. Thank you very much for coming, and we'll see you next time, okay?
Thanks, Connor.
All right, thank you. I know, it's taken years, but we instituted the stickers.
A song next time.
Okay, now we're gonna go to board reports, and I'm gonna go to Craig.
Well, thank you. I have the distinct pleasure to speak to the third graders at Jefferson about their trip to the fair. We got to talk to them about chickens and cows and horses. my previous life as an ag teacher, I got to talk to them about what it was to show an animal and kind of some of those things. The two things that I think hopefully they remembered, one is the earlobe of a chicken. If it's red, it lays a non-white egg, and if it's white, it lays a white egg.
What?
So that's, you can tell by looking at a chicken's face what color egg it's gonna lay.
No way.
Yeah, pretty cool.
That's crazy.
And that if an animal gets loose or gets kind of crazy in any barn, go to the fence, except the swine barn. In a swine barn, you go to the center, because the pig's gonna go against the fence and knock you over. It won't try to, it'll just try to get behind you, it'll knock you over. So anyway, they seem to like those little tidbits. Also, I've talked to a lot of folks, staff, parents, community people, just with a lot of questions about how this pullback of funds is working, and the why behind it. And so I guess I'm just going to encourage the board to maybe look at publicizing a why somewhere in here, because that's, yes, we need to save money, but cutting staff contracts just before school start when no new information came to light at that point. They could have told them in April that contract was going to get cut, and yet they let this person sign a lease, sign everything, so now she's stuck here with less than a full-time contract. So anyway, it just seems there are ways that could have been done differently. So that's my report.
Hey, thank you, Craig. Lisa.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to mention that I've been working on, for the board, we've been working on our Board of Distinction application for WASDA, and we are highlighting the PLC initiative that's now in its 4th year. That's been a really great learning experience for me because I was, of course, not on the board when that was initiated. So that's been really nice to hear about, and I think we've heard a lot of updates in our board meetings, which is something that we're highlighting in this as a really great example of how the board can support conditions for professional development and student excellence. So that's been fun to write. I'm almost done with it.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I will be circulating that to all of you very soon. And then also just some liaison business for Jefferson Elementary, where I'm also a parent, but the PTA met for the first time. We have a lot of new families, and I think that's true across the district, and it's been really great to see the energy and people who are wanting to get involved, and just wanted to highlight, I think, how well the school's been doing sort of integrating new families, and I've heard a lot of positive feedback about how welcome they feel. There've also been some, changes that happen in the first few weeks, and that's been pretty well communicated. And one example of that is this morning, Principal Winningham, who's the new principal at Jefferson, had a Wednesdays with Winningham event for parents and families that was very well attended from 8 to 9 a.m. So just a great example of family engagement that it was fun to participate, and it was also great to see how many people showed up.
Thank you, Lisa. Amanda.
Yes, I've got a few things. I'll start with the fun stuff. I attended the first Sunnyside PTO meeting last week, and we also had a great turnout. Lots of new families from PCM. That it was fun to see them there. They seem eager to be involved, and I hope that we can continue to make them feel welcome. Great conversations there, so that was fun. Sunnyside is ramping up for their Move-a-thon, which is their big fundraiser. It'll be on October 11th. And last year, they were able to raise money to do some playground improvements. So they'll be working with Justin to try to get those hopefully in before next school year. So that's exciting for them. I haven't heard what they're going to do this year yet. So that'll be fun. The PTO is also sponsoring an assembly next week on September 18th. They're going to be hosting Dion Leonard, who is an author that's going to be coming through town, who wrote the Finding Goby books, which all the 4th graders at Sunnyside read. So that'll be fun. He'll be coming to talk to the students, so they're excited about that. And then, so that's all my Sunnyside stuff. And then my plug for WASDA nominating committee. The candidacy filing window closes next Monday, the 16th. So I'm encouraging anybody who wants to become more involved with the state to consider applying. For our District Area 10, we have a spot open on the Resolutions Committee, as well as the Legislative Committee, And then for WASDA spots, there's the president-elect, vice president, and board of directors positions open. So there's my WASDA nominating committee plug. And then I wanted to do a short report on the libraries in the district, because there's been some questions that have come up. So I spoke to several people in the district to gather some facts that I'm eager to share with everybody. So we currently have 1 certificated librarian and 5 library paras working across our 6 schools. The model of a 1 certificated librarian and library paras covering the schools started during the 2010-2011 school year. And we currently have almost $500,000 budgeted per year for our libraries and staff. So as part of the district's budget cuts this school year, we were able to replace some staff that left, but hopefully that's temporary. Please keep in mind that most districts in Washington, if not all, had to do budget cuts this year. And luckily ours were much less than a lot of others. And I'd just like to let the community know that the board is always happy to listen, clarify, and answer questions. We don't have the opportunity to do any of those if grievances are being aired on social media rather than being brought directly to the board. And then I just had a couple additional thoughts that are mine, not as representing the board, but representing my position on the board. So here we go. Social media is an entrepreneur for conflict, and as we're trying to guide, teach, and protect our students from bullying, I hope that the adults in the community can lead by example. Adults targeting other adults is no different from students targeting other students. Both are unacceptable and uncivil. Even though we may not always agree on everything, there is no reason to tear others down, and no one benefits. The budget cuts have been uncomfortable for everyone. Most people in the district have stepped up without question to work harder with less for the benefit of our students, and I'm grateful for that. It's not a perfect situation, and we are working hard to have budget cuts that minimally impact students, which has been our goal since these conversations transparently started this past winter. I'm not sure if it's possible to have cuts that have no impact on students, since our business is students. If anyone is interested in the most impactful way to support our school district in obtaining the funds necessary to successfully run, it is to contact the state legislators and advocate for our students and their education. Not only are the district expenses increasing, like we are all dealing with at home, the educational support from the legislature is decreasing, and it's unsustainable. So that's my report.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Well said.
Thank you.
I also have a few things. So first off, I just wanted to remind the board, I know we had a work session last week, and it was brought up that we were looking for ways to discuss things. I know Craig had mentioned that looking for opportunities to discuss things, and I just wanted to give out a friendly reminder. The way that we discuss things is through discussion items, right? And so the way that you get something put on the discussion items is you either email me and say, hey, can we discuss this? Or the board can do so in a motion of the body in the meeting. It's really not advisable to do that because of OPMA rules. You're not giving people an opportunity to comment. But I just wanted to remind, if there are topics that anybody would like to discuss, I'm happy to talk with you about where they fit on the agenda and at what point we could put them on, and we can work out the logistics. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Next, I heard back from WASDA on their superintendent evaluation policy. They are not finished, but they are close. And so what they would like to do is Cindy would like to come during either a board meeting or work session and do a presentation in the next month or so. I'm going to send her our schedule and then just be like, hey, does any of these days work for you? And so I may end up kind of planting a presentation either on a work session or on a board meeting randomly, whenever she can come. But once they do the presentation, from what it sounded like, we would probably need to make some policy adjustments and changes, and then we could pass it. So not all bad news, but I think they're worrying with the same thing I was, which is it's a very, much more complicated process than one realizes. And so that's good news, though, and I'll keep you all apprised on when we can schedule that. I also have the pleasure of meeting with the Kiwanis president Tuesday for some coffee, and so we had a really great discussion I was informed of a little history that I would like to kind of share with the board. So the Stuff the Bus, the Kiwanis for years has had a really great relationship with the school board. Susan Weed and several Kiwanis members actually started the Stuff the Bus effort together, and so it was an effort basically started by our board. They're on their 16th year at this point. They're super excited. They've got a bunch of other projects coming down the pipeline too. One of which is tomorrow, they're doing a grand opening of the only ADA accessible playground in the region. It's basically over by the Whitman County Humane Society, but it's like that cool little park. And I never knew what that was over there for. And she told me all about it. I was like, that's amazing. I had no idea. But that grand opening is tomorrow, and the Kiwanis was instrumental in getting that open. And so I did talk to Sandra about opportunities for us, being the board and the Kiwanis, to collaborate, given that they're a student-focused organization. And so Sandra was very interested in us helping plan the next Stuff the Bus. I think she had kind of been missing that board input since Susan has been gone. And so I did agree to help with that planning process in May. I think they are also really just looking for more opportunities for engagement. And so they do meet every Thursday. And so if board members would like to attend, I think they would appreciate it. We would definitely be welcome. And I think we have a good bit of information that we could share with them. I was actually a little like embarrassed that we hadn't been keeping them more up to date, but I think when Susan left, we had been relying, because Bob does go to the meetings, but we had kind of been relying on Susan to be that bridge. And given she's no longer here, I think we need to be better at kind of reaching out. So I'm going to, kind of do the Stuff the Bus thing, but keep that in mind for Kiwanis and other civil organizations, because I think there's a few in town that because between Allison, if you think about it, she was on the College Hill Association, the Historical Buildings and Preservation Society, a number of other organizations that were civic and legal in nature. Susan was on Chamber, Susan was on Kiwanis, Susan, you know what I mean? And so there's a lot of organizations that we no longer have representation on. And so just keep that in mind. I think I'm going to start trying to assemble a list of things, and then maybe keep a running list and get, maybe some volunteers to kind of reach out to those folks. Because I think if we kind of split it up, we could each maybe take one and see how it goes. So think about that, but I think it would be a good opportunity for us to kind of get plugged back into the community, especially because, I think we took for granted the fact that Susan and Allison were doing all that for us. And so I'm definitely noticing their absence in that regard. And then I think I'll deal with the rest of it in my mini presentations. So I'm done. Oh yeah, what's up?
Do you know what time the park opening is tomorrow?
Oh, noon, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, because it was right at lunch.
Mary's Park, right?
It's Mary's Park.
Right.
Mary's Park, yep.
And Kiwanis meets Thursdays 12 to 1, so they are meeting at the park for the Kiwanis.
That's the only reason I thought that, because
Okay,
she
okay.
said it was during their regular meeting,
Yeah,
because
so
I was
they-
like, I'll come to your meeting. She's like, not this week.
Okay.
So,
So it is at Mary's Park
Yep.
tomorrow, 12 to 1.
Thanks.
no, and I don't know if anybody's ever seen that. Y'all seen that park? But like my kids saw it and were like, oh, a new park. And so we went and checked it out. And it's awesome. Like I immediately noticed the accessibility, and I didn't know it was built intentionally, but they scoped out and did a huge study on, how to make it completely ADA accessible. And so it's just a really great asset to the community, I think. So, okay, Dr. Maxwell.
Thank you very much. So I have several things to cover tonight. So I'm going to just start with a aquatic center update. So for the benefit of the audience, I'll kind of go over a little bit of background and then kind of give you an up-to-date where we are right now. So because there is some confusion about the background of that. So the Schweitzer family built the aquatic center about 27 years ago at the request of the then superintendent. The aquatic center is built on school property and is operated by the City of Pullman Parks Department. So the school district and the park district formed a current agreement in 2003 where the school would own the aquatic center and the city would operate it. And the school would pay the city for its use. So we actually paid to use that facility. The pool successfully operated for over a quarter of a century, benefiting a wide range of our community from very young to senior citizens through school and city programs. So about 5 years ago, there were conversations with the city to renovate the facility, which included an engineering plan to modernize the facility. The Schweitzer family has proposed a gift of modernization to the city, so there's been an offer to pay to modernize that building. It's 27 years old and it needs a lot of renovation and modernization. So fast forward to 2024, given the status of school funding in Washington State and budget constraints resulting from declining enrollment, higher energy insurance costs, Pullman School District, we can't continue to afford to pay $100,000 a year plus half of everything that needs to be repaired in that building. That's every year, so that's costly. So the current interlocal agreement, which was drafted in 2003, as I said earlier, is out of date and needs to be renegotiated and updated. There's things in there that don't exist anymore, or the city doesn't use, or we don't offer anymore, frankly. So PSD sent a letter to the city of Pullman notifying the city of district's intent to terminate the interlocal agreement, specifically the section regarding the aquatic center, which required a year's notice in accordance with the agreement. The purpose of the letter is to explore whether the district can renegotiate the interlocal agreement. That was the intention of it. We used the verbiage in the agreement because that was the verbiage in the agreement. So PSD, the Pullman School District, and the City of Pullman have begun discussions, holding 2 meetings to address updating the interlocal agreement, the future of the aquatic center, and looking at long-term goals, usage numbers, and the need to gather more information about the center's operational costs. So that's one thing that, as a board, really be thinking about. What's that long-term goal? What do we envision for that? We are in the process, Pullman School District and the city, of scheduling another meeting later this month to continue that discussion. We have one, I believe, tentatively scheduled for September 23rd. We may schedule another one on top of that, depending, or we may expand that meeting to talk about the interlocal agreement and the aquatic center, or we may split those two out. So we're still working on that schedule. The bottom line is Pullman School District will still support both the girls and boys swim teams, regardless of the outcome. So I just want to make sure that people are aware of that. So just a quick update. I'll have more after the September 23rd meeting, or meetings, depending on what we're able to schedule between the city and the school district. So wanted to give you that update.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maxwell.
All right, board professional development update. So we had Jay Marie come to the last board work session, and that was part of the school district's professional development plan, which you have. The board participated in a communication-focused training session with Jay Marie on Wednesday, September 4th. The professional development focused on the following topics: how to communicate well as a board with each other and the community members and advocacy groups, techniques and meeting/communication formats to maximize constituent input across the full breadth of our community's perspective, ways to keep Pullman student needs in the forefront of the work and communications, how to respond to public questions about confidentiality issues, and self-management skills for high-stress situations, and tips to help listen well even when you fundamentally may disagree with someone. So following that, I know the board had talked about listening session formats. I did email Jay Marie. I have not heard back from her because I think she's probably traveling right now, but I will follow up if I don't hear from her by the end of the week to schedule a follow-up Zoom training that we talked about, so, and planning. So if I don't hear from her by Friday, I will reach out to her again, but I did send an email, but I know she was traveling overseas this week, so wanted to give you an update on that. I'm gonna ask Justin to give a transportation update as part of my superintendent's report. Thank you, Justin.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Before we get too far into the quick update, if we're going to start with transportation, we sure better thank the people that are doing all the work behind the scenes for transportation. So our transportation team is doing a lot for our kids, and they do it oftentimes without thank you. They do it behind the scenes. Our drivers are fantastic. Tyler, who's our supervisor out at transportation, is doing a fantastic job. This is his first year in this role. He's working incredibly hard. Mechanic Jason out there is just doing amazing things. Got everything approved appropriately this summer so that we'd be prepared and ready to go for the start of the school year. So a great team out there that's doing a lot of good work for our kids, for our community. If you didn't know, I didn't know until I got into this role how big our district was.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's 220 square miles, by the way, just so you know. That's a lot of ground to cover for our drivers.
Yep.
A lot
Especially
of
when the
ground.
roads aren't exactly convenient either.
That is correct. And at the start of your, things are always a little bit rocky, but it's already getting a little bit better every day. We're getting routes down a little bit more. We're getting times a little better spot. So they're doing great work. They're covering a lot of ground. But speaking of drivers, we're also in need of drivers continually. This is not a new issue for us. We've needed drivers for a long time. We continue to need drivers to step up and come be a part of a great team. We already have a great team there, so let's come be a part of that. And being part of that team then helps support our kids because we are in a spot where we have to get our routes done first, right? We have to get kids to and from school. And then, as important as our athletics and activities are, those come second. And so we're in a spot where if we don't have the drivers to run the routes for athletics and activities, because we have to run our regular routes, we then have to either cancel or reschedule, and nobody likes that. I've been a coach here in Pullman schools in several different sports. I know what it means for our kids to participate. And so I don't want that for any of our kids, but we need help. We need more drivers. For sure, to help join that really strong team. We're working with Pullman Transit, right, for some of our routes. One thing that I've learned that I've already made a note of for next year, I want to, in about May, I want to get in touch with the city, who is being very flexible and trying to work with us, but I would like to work with them at that time to try to see if I can help set some times a little bit differently. I know that we're just one part of use of Pullman Transit, but we've had a few instances where there have been times, for example, the high school has a route that drops at 8:26 at the Aquatic Center, but school starts at 8:30. That's tough to do. We've got things at Lincoln where school gets out at 2:50 and the bus leaves from down by City Hall at 2:59. That's a pretty good trek for a sixth grader to make with a big backpack and probably an instrument or something too. So I'm going to try to help get in front of that next time. But again, the city's been really flexible in trying to help and are making adjustments now. I just hope that I can be a little bit more proactive with that in the future as we go. And lastly, you know, it's always rough at the start of the year, and then you throw in construction downtown. And our first 2 weeks have been home Cougar football weekends, which means Friday football traffic. I think our drivers have handled it really well. Our team has done a good job, but those are a couple big things that have come up on top of an already difficult time. So that's my share. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jess, I
Yep.
appreciate it. Thank you for continuing to work to get those routes adjusted with the city. So, two more things on my report. I was able to watch the statewide, OSPI statewide webinar yesterday with State Superintendent Chris Rickdahl. I won't go in, it was a lot of different information contained in that statewide, so if you have the chance and want to go watch it on, I think it's WaGov TV, I will try to also send you some resources from that so you have it. I haven't had a chance yet, but I'll just hit some of the highlights. He talked about the governor's budget. So that is expected to be the middle of December. The governor to have that balanced budget, well, at least a draft of the balanced budget, of course. Three of the four initiatives on the ballot have the ability to impact that budget. So this is going to be a very, very interesting budget cycle, depending on what happens with those initiatives. So they could have a no impact or significant impact on the budget. So the OSPI is backing the priority of the big three, and I've talked about this with WASDA, WASA, WA, are all on the same page with transportation, MSOCs, which is material supplies and operating costs, and special education. So that is a big three priority. They also are rooted in constitutional obligation of the legislature, so that's why and they also benefit every district, not just some districts. So all 295 would benefit from proper funding in each of those categories, transportation, MSOCs, or special ed. In addition to that, there's some other budget areas that they're going to focus on. One is trying to lift classified salaries, and that's all classified, not just a particular group of classified, by the way. Trying to drive more money to high poverty schools. The big three, attendance and discipline will also be an area of focus. Student mental health, as far as ESD models and coordinators. So they're really trying to push for ESDs to take the advance on some of those. And then dual credit. And so again, they're really focusing on ways to provide students more access to dual credit. And so, again, it's a real quick overview, but I just wanted to share that piece of the webinar. Also, talked a lot about public records requests. They are increasing across the state of Washington, and they are costly. And they are really, really difficult for school districts. Ourselves, we're putting out tens of thousands of dollars to, just on the software alone is almost $29,000 per year to use. That's a lot. And that doesn't even count the hours and labor costs that go into those, which is high. And so we're going to be trying to track that a little bit better to give you a better reflection of the actual costs on that. But it's significant, and it was interesting that he was bringing that up as well. Beyond money, they'll be doing some civil rights compliance reviews with districts. A couple laws passed this last legislative session, mostly on we are complying with all of those, or most school districts are, but it's making sure that folks know to go where to get that information, especially on websites. And so there's some information that they'll be checking up to make sure that we have those, and those have been updated on our website. Also found out that high school and beyond plans, that the state has selected School Links as the vendor for high school and beyond plans, so the same format. So if we're not using School Links, we're going to have to shift to that program. So, and then talked a little about artificial intelligence. There's an innovation summit, one on the east side and one on the west side of the state in October, and so hoping to attend that to get some more information on that. But that was a really, really quick, of an hour-long webinar, but if you have time, I would highly encourage you to take a look at that. They did send out a companion resources, so I will send this to you because there's about 20 links. So, so as soon as I have time, I will get that out to you, so you have that. Lastly, I did want to, at Pullman Education Foundation meeting Tuesday morning, just let you know that the PHS booster auction will be November 14th. That's usually right where in the WASDA conference, but just a reminder, in the past, the board has put together a basket for the auction, so I'm not sure if the board is interested in that, but just to let you know. So.
It was horrible. I had to do that last time.
No pressure,
I would
but
really love someone else to do the basket this year is all I'm gonna say. But if no one else does it, I will do it again.
I'll just put a
I was
plug
told
in.
it went over really well, though. It went great, but it only took like 6 hours of thinking, so. throw that out there. Okay, Dr. Maxwell, is that it?
That's it for now.
Nice,
I don't
thank you
wanna
very
put over
much.
the edge with
No
anything
worries,
else,
I
so.
just, you were giving me flashbacks to the, sitting in the store staring at stuff, going like, well, is somebody gonna buy this at an auction or not? I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, excellent. So next we will move to program reports, and I'd like to ask Debbie Crabtree to come up for the Alternative Learning Experiences report.
So, this is the report for last year's ALE, or Alternative Learning Experiences, and I'll wait for him to get it up there. quick overview of what the ALE program is. It's an alternative learning experience, obviously the name, to help our students who maybe need some different structures in school to get through and earn a high school diploma at PHS. So it's helping keep students here. When students want to be in the program, they apply, they meet with their families and the counselors and discuss what the best options are for them and what courses they might need to take to be successful. And then it goes to a committee for approval, and students can be part of that program. So it's open to any student. There's a lot of reasons up there why students might choose to be in that program. It might be some different extenuating life circumstances that they need to have school look a little different, or maybe they need some credit recovery or credit retrieval. Sometimes they need, have some emotional or health needs that being in the building all day is not the best fit for them at that point in time in their life. Or sometimes it's students who are returning fifth year, they need to get their diploma, they didn't earn it in 4 years, and they're trying to retrieve those credits. So we have 7 subjects that we offer courses in. Last year there were 78 courses offered through our program in those 7 subjects. And the enrollment, as you can see, was a lot of seniors, helping get them across the line so that they can get what they need to have and be moving past high school. And last year we had 1 fifth-year senior who was able to participate in that program to help get them going. So we had 29 students that participated. There were 34.67 credits completed. Some students, when they transfer, have partial credit, and so they need to earn that, and this is one way that they can do that. So we have the different subjects last year. As you can see up there, what subjects kids had classes or courses in. I know the number 56 students is different than the one on the previous page, but that's a lot of our students took courses in more than one subject, so it adds them up total a little different. So we had 41.67 credits attempted. Quick, I'm kind of cruising through it, but the program, it's unique. It helps our students graduate. Our goal is to have every student graduate Pullman High School, and we know that there's different needs for different students and how they need to do that. It allows them to complete the courses that they need to complete here and maybe come into the building for things like metals and woods or culinary arts or different courses that they can't get through an online program, but still have parts of their day where they can work on that in a different environment. Because our goal is to meet all the needs of all of our students, so this is one of our ways of doing that. And just to kind of sum it up, last year we had 16 seniors who met their graduation requirements by participating in this program. That's it. Super quick and sweet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie.
And that's awesome that we got just under 10% more students to graduate just because of ALE. That's awesome.
Our goal is to help everybody, whatever they need to get there.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Okay, next I'd like to ask Roberta Kramer up to give the summer school report. Good evening, Roberta.
In full disclosure, I can't see very well because I had my second cataract removed.
Oh,
So I've got it right here. So I'm never going to look over here, but I'll hopefully remember to
Hit the clicker.
proceed. This is wrong. I can tell that it doesn't look like this.
Just check.
We should have just let her go.
Yeah.
It would be a little challenging, but, yeah.
That same one.
Nope, that's it.
There, that's a
There we
fancy one, 4 slides.
you're already done. Look at that.
Already did. Thank you, Ryan, appreciate it. Okay, so this is a brief report on summer school. So at elementary, we had 2 teachers, an administrator, and we had 1 student teacher who had been with the teacher and wanted to stay for summer school. So what a great experience for them to be able to have. We had 32 students who were recommended, and remember, these are 3rd graders going into 4th grade. 28 of those students attended, and we had 25 out of 28 students that demonstrated growth. The 3 that didn't attend the whole entire time. And this also was 8 days. So it just goes to show intense instruction over a short period of time can help kids to move along, but they need to be there. Okay, at the high school, we had 2 teachers, they did credit recovery, just what Debbie was just talking about. We had 34 students who participated, 40 classes that were assigned. So we had some students that took more than one class, and we had 19 classes completed. I can promise you that we have 21 incompletes, and I know because I see the emails because I serve on that same committee, so I see. And so there's just some kiddos that need to finish up some things. So Debbie and I have kind of talked about taking a different look at perhaps expecting students to come to the high school every day during summer school. They have some flexibility in coming in to check in or things like that. And while I think that it is flexible for the student, it also decreases the likelihood that they'll complete. So we're going to work on that for next year. And then we also offered a special education program. We offered this over 3 weeks. This year, we offered a preschool class based off of the students' data and their need to attend. We had 2 students at that level, 5 at elementary, and 6 between middle school and high school. That was all held at the high school. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Was there any middle school, summer school students?
There wasn't. We didn't offer middle school because of the budget crunch, and our learning assistance program funds are, well, we actually overspent last year. And so that's the only place that we would have had to pay for summer school. It is something we definitely want to go back to. There's 2 things we want to go back and have again, okay? That's the transition from 5th grade to 6th grade. We found that those sessions, we typically ran, students had the opportunity to come for 2 days, and we ran, I think, like 4 blocks of that, and it was really successful. Same with going to high school, and so we want to go back to that as well. I'm hopeful that we may get a little increase in apportionment in our LAP funds, and if we do, we're going to set that aside for that, because they really need that opportunity at both levels.
And so we're prioritizing the completion of like degrees, basically,
Yes.
graduation.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
how many students in the middle school were recommended?
In the middle school?
Yeah, so we didn't have summer school, but were there no students
No,
that would have?
we didn't request recommendations.
Okay, so there would be no recommendation even
Yeah.
if there was no middle school?
Right.
Okay.
And if you remember several years ago, the last time we offered an academic-based summer school at the middle school, we had about 6 students that attended. We really struggled, and understandably so, they're young adolescents. They want to have fun, sleep in.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Berta.
Mhm.
Are there any other questions? Sorry, I kind of just took over there. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thanks.
Okay, next we'll move to the equity update, and I will go ahead and begin, and then I'm gonna pass it off to Dr. Maxwell. Actually, why don't you go ahead with the update, and then I'll finish
Okay.
up, so.
So again, equity update. So I wanted to give an update on the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Belonging Task Force. So as of today, we have 7 parent guardians only apply. We've had parents/guardians and community members only 3 applications. So administrators, we have 2 applications from school administrators. From students, we have 3 applications. From staff members, we have 1 application. And then from a community member only, that's not a parent, we have 1 application. So we have a total of 17 applications as of today. And we're continuing to advertise and push that out in our communications.
Thank you very much. And go ahead, please.
When does that close?
Courtney, do you know the close date on that? September 16th.
Some
Thank
Monday.
you.
And just to add on to that a few things, I did request, as you heard earlier, the ASB rep to, to see if we could get some more student applications. I sent out a special invitation on Friday, I believe, very recently, to some folks who in the past had contacted us about equity-related issues. You may have gotten the email, but I BCC'd everyone, so they wouldn't see everyone's list, so you may not know who's it. But if you have questions, let me know. Feel free to forward that out to anybody else that you think would want to be on the committee, right? Because I kind of left that open. But we're mostly just seeking applications. I wanted to just add a few comments on to as far as the process for how we're going to go about this, right? Because I'm kind of, I'm making it up one meeting behind we having it. So my plan is next board meeting, we will have reviewed the applications. And so once the application closes, Courtney's going to send them to all of us. And all I'm looking for you to do is find your top 3. Well, actually, this is what's going to be weird. I think we're going to need to judge all of them, right? So you need to basically just read through all of them and give them a quick score. I'm thinking 1 through 5, right? And so what we're going to do is you're all going to submit your scores to me. Like this person, number 4, whatever. Like score person, score person. I'm going to aggregate them. And then during the board meeting, I'm going to come with a list of recommended people based on the scores, right? And then we can then discuss amongst ourselves our scoring, right? Which is like, oh, I scored this person this way or that way. If we have some, that we're on the fence or they're close. I'm imagining similar to the teacher awards and the staff awards. Usually there's a few that rise to the top because they're good applications, right? So I'm kind of assuming that's going to be part of it. But we're basically next meeting going to hopefully have reviewed the applications, have submitted scores to me. I will tabulate, and then we'll discuss first the committee and appointment. We will appoint them in the meeting then. Then we will discuss agenda items, right? And so what I'd also like you to come with next time are some beginning agenda items. And also, I would like you to review the mission statement that I sent out in the email. Okay, so I've sent an email out to the special invitation. It has a mission statement at the front. It is very generic because I hadn't talked to y'all about it yet. And so what I'd like you to do is review it. I'm going to kind of solidify it a bit more, but I'd like you to do the same. And then I'd like us, when we leave next meeting, to have a good mission statement, to have a roster of attendees, and to have a few beginning agenda items. Honestly, these can be, come up with ways to, recommend or come up with a process to engage with the board. I think the first things that we're going to need to do as a committee is figure out how we work together, But Craig, I'm also looking for you on leadership on this, and so let me know if there are things you would like covered first or you want to talk about. But basically, I just wanted to leave you with the idea that next meeting, I would like us all to have some agenda item topics, have reviewed the mission statement and have feedback, and then have reviewed the applications and have scored them. Once we kind of gather feedback, we're going to take it. If we can decide all of it in next meeting, my hope is that we can do that. If not, we have room for another meeting. We definitely need to get the list of applicants approved and the committee appointed next meeting, though. Because as soon as we do, we're going to start working out meeting agendas, because our first meeting is hopefully going to be in October, right? So it's a delicate balance, but I think it'll work out great. I have a few ideas on possible agenda topics, so we won't be starting from scratch, right? But I'd like to hear from each one of you as well. So I didn't want to pollute the stream with my own ideas first. I'm going to get them all out in the open. Are there any questions?
Is Aaron in a place where he can participate in this? Because he's not going to be at this.
He's not going to be at the next meeting, but I will email him specifically and just ask him to contribute. And he definitely knows about the applications and stuff. So if he can grade the apps and send us ideas, I think he'll be okay, right? Like as far as input from him, because this is going to be a continuous kind of thing, because I'm imagining once we get a task force, we're going to put a task force update, and then each time I keep playing my pen, each time we'll kind of refine the process as we go. Yes.
I was also gonna add that he helped to review the application before it got sent out as well, Aaron did.
Yeah, that's true.
So he's been,
Correct.
he's been part of the process so
Yeah.
far. But I was gonna ask, so we'll be discussing the applicants during the meeting?
I want to pick them during the meeting.
Okay.
And so what I'm really looking for is, we don't necessarily need to, and this is where I'm going to have to consult with Bob on
Yeah.
privacy, right? But I really want to hear, basically, this is the reason I chose this person. We don't even need to use their names, right?
Okay.
And that's only with people that we're on the fence about, right? So this is people that you know, they say there's 4 people with the same score, right? And so like, how do we, you know, and I mean, I'm open to thoughts though. Like I said, I'm making this up as I go. So if you think that there's a better way, like if you want us to have decided and just approve the list, we can do,
Well, I'm just trying to understand, and then my second follow-up question is, should we be appointing the committee before checking with them to confirm that they're still agree?
my imagination is that they applied, so they're consenting to be on the task force. Now, once we send them the thing, hey, congratulations, you've been nominated, I would then expect them to accept or decline, and then we can come back and reappoint, right? That was my thought. But what are y'all's thoughts on the open discussion of candidates?
I find that a little uncomfortable
Okay.
because I imagine that anyone applying to this is a good candidate. And I think a lot of it may come down to balance and collaboration as a group rather than individual merits. I mean, it's not like when you're picking people for a job and you have a list of, job attributes. Part of what we're looking for in this is being able to bring, a diversity of insight, and that is somewhat more of a group goal than an individual goal.
True. Okay, here's what we'll do. Tell me if this makes sense. I know, as we go, right? Building the plane as we fly.
Discussing.
How about this? Send me your scores, and then let me look at them. And if it's obvious, we're good, right? Because it's like, oh, these top 7 are the candidates. If there are close calls, I will reach out to you individually on your scores, or as a group to say, hey, we had close calls, and then I would like you to reply to me individually saying, hey, I'll adjust, or okay, that person makes more sense. Because basically, I'll send you out a summary ahead of time, as soon as we get the scores, and then if there's anything that's close that we may need to discuss, I may in that email just be like, what do y'all think about, and then propose a solution. And then basically just get back to me with, that sounds good. And then what we'll do in the meeting is just appoint the committee, or the task force, right? And so then we won't do any just as far as like talking about their applications, because I kind of, I was a little bit on the fence there too, and I totally see y'all's point. And so, does that sound like a better way?
Just that the highest score may not be the best diversity of group. I mean, so the balance of, we want as many different viewpoints as possible, so even though they got the best score, that may not make them the best.
So it's gonna be defined by their type, and so there definitely is gonna be 1 staff member, and there's definitely gonna be 1 administrator, 3 community members, 2 students, right? So it's gonna be in those types that we're ranking, right? So like of the 3 student applications, for instance, if that's all we get, 2 of them will need to be chosen. So you would rank the 3, and then the top 2 we would pick, right? And then same thing for staff members, if there's 5, or, right now there's 1, so they're the lucky candidate. But if there's more, we would rank them in order of their, yes.
I know you're super eager to get this committee appointed, and I appreciate that. Can I make a suggestion?
I always.
That would be just maybe like a compromise, kind of similar to how we run the teacher, I can't even remember the name of it right now, but the
Dedicated teacher nomination.
Dedicated Teacher Award. What if we gave you our scores ahead of time, and then after the meeting in the executive session, would it be appropriate to talk about, you could say, here's the scores, here's what I'm looking at appointing. At that time, if there's any discussion that we would need to be having, we could do it in private and then appoint at the next, and then reach out to those people and then
And verify
announce
that they
and
went, okay.
appoint at the following meeting.
Is that a legitimate executive session topic?
It would be, I'm looking at my cheat sheet here, because it's usually
Well, they've changed it
real
recently to
estate,
where-
yeah, personnel, qualifications of applicant for performance, qualificated candidate to, discussion, legal counsel.
Is it appointment qualifications of an applicant?
It
But it's
could
not an
be,
elected
but it's
office,
not
though.
elected office, though. That's the RCW on that. Any interviews, but these are elected, so,
Let us look into it.
yeah, let's look into it and then we'll
Yes.
get back.
Yeah, I think, I think we should basically assess the applications for overall meeting the qualifications that we laid out in the application as far as what we were looking for, right? Like, we should always go back to the standards that we put there as far as what values and, you know, value and collaboration, and I can't remember exactly all the other things that were part of that. I mean, I think we need to be more mindful about the composition of this group compared to even some other groups because of the mandate that the group is given, that, like, for instance, we wouldn't want to end up with a task force that is all women or all men if we can avoid that, even if, though we, you know, we don't have control over who's applying.
We did not ask for gender, did we? Because it's more of a question,
I'm trying to
essay
think of
type.
I'm trying to
There's no
remember the
demographics on there,
application.
are there?
Race.
Yeah.
Optional, but there's no gender or age or
No.
like sexual
Okay.
orientation? Okay.
So that's good, so we're not considering that really anyway. I think we should look at the applications and basically just, I don't know, I think there should be some value placed on just people who volunteered to do this work for our district. Like, if you're interested in doing it, we should be inviting as many people as we can, and I know there's not room for everybody, but I think we should basically be looking at it more from like, who are we so excited to invite? And then start from that position and then continue adding until we can't add anymore.
Greg,
Which
do
is
you have
not
any
that
thoughts?
different, but.
Well, just I like that, and it's not just the diversity of, you know, what group they represent, but there's ethnic diversity, there's socioeconomic diversity, there's a number of different, you know, handicap, there's all kinds of things that we probably want to incorporate in this group, so that mix is gonna be an important part of, as a topic gets presented to them, how they're able to deal with that.
We have a lot of people in our community who've been very good advocates for topics that aren't personal identity issues, but just awareness of different forms of diversity.
Okay, so a couple thoughts.
Yeah.
One, if you know these people, tell them to apply. Because right now we only have 13 applications, and those are the people we are going to be choosing from. The second thought is we did not ask them for their socioeconomic status or, you know, ADA status or, you know, a number of other things.
Good point.
And so I don't know, what I'm more looking for, and like, at least my vision, you know, and this is just me, is a group of people who care and who want to improve and want to help, you know. And I was talking to a few folks about how this committee would work, and somebody brought up, it's appreciative inquiry, right? So, because I was like, how does a group like this work? Like, what do? You know, and they're like, well, you know, one way is to practice the appreciative inquiry model, right? Which is, doesn't matter who you are, you start with like what we appreciate about any particular topic. And then you go into what we could do better, right? And then you go into how that would work. And I think honestly, that's a very intriguing idea. And I really think that it's sort of like a jury, right? Like, even if these folks don't particularly represent the, you know, the demographic that we're talking about in any particular policy, if we present it to them that way, my hope is that we can get a better policy back out of it, right? And that's just my kind of thinking. But back to the question at hand. I hear you on the applications, and honestly, we worried about this as far as how many people we wanted to appoint, you know, because it's like too big and it's hard to come to a consensus, and too small and you don't have enough representation, right? So 7 is what we got. What I think, I like your idea of just going through all of them. We need to give everybody a chance, you know? And so let's review all of them. Send me your lists. You don't even bother scoring them, because at this point I'm kind of thinking like, well, if there's going to be students and staff, and why don't you just put, this is who I recommend for each category, right? And then I'm just going to be like, well, 4 of you recommended this person, and so we're going to use that person. And then that's where, if we want to discuss, like say I pick someone else, right? Then I may want to jump in and be like, you know, I picked this person and I really think that they would be a good candidate for X. And so that was the kind of discussion I was envisioning, right? Would that be awkward, do you think? I mean, like, is that too much public knowledge?
I feel like we might
for-
want to invite them or something, like, I don't know, it feels,
I feel strange talking about people.
No, I feel you. It's, okay, so here's what we're gonna do then. We're gonna appoint the list in a public meeting. no discussion unless it cannot be avoided whatsoever. So send me a list of people you want to appoint to the committee. If it just, everyone picks different people, we will revisit and plan B, okay? And I don't know what plan B is yet, so, but we'll figure it out.
I think we just draw from a jar. Like, I don't think we can go wrong. I mean, if people are answering these questions and volunteering their time for us, like, they've already
Random number
basically-
generator could be plan
Yeah,
B.
no, I
I'm
mean,
totally
I
cool.
don't think, I feel like in some ways we're overthinking it. Like, what we have, like, in just collecting these applications, we've already have like a really amazing pool of people who are dedicated to the students of our district and helping us in a lot of ways, so that's cool.
Okay, and so the only reason I allowed this discussion during a report is because it was procedural, just FYI. So we're not talking about an actual thing, we're talking about the process of doing something.
It was
So
also listed on the agenda as a
it was,
topic.
but it's not a discussion item, it's a report topic.
Okay.
But I was trying to keep it out of the concept of the thing and more into the nuts and bolts of how we're doing it, and so I think that's appropriate. Okay, I am totally done, finally, and we can move to public comment. Or no, wait, yes,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm all lost on my sheet. The public comment section of the agenda provides an opportunity for individuals or members of a group to address the board on educational issues. If you intend to provide public comment this evening, you may register to speak using the sign-in sheet located near the boardroom entrance. To ensure fairness and provide for an orderly meeting, we respectfully require that individuals speak only once for a maximum of 3 minutes and may not transfer their speaking time to others. Please be attentive, as your name will be called in the order it is listed on the sign-in sheet. To assist board members in review and consideration of your comments, we appreciate your providing a written copy of your remarks along with your email or mailing address on the sign-in sheet. When addressing the board, please approach the microphone and state your name before presenting your comments. The board will listen and may offer clarification if needed. However, the board will not engage in a discussion at this time. Depending on the nature of the topic, the board may decide to schedule it as a discussion item for a future meeting. We kindly request that all comments remain civil and respectful, and we remind you to consider the impact of your words and know that you bear personal responsibility for their content. We caution you to avoid certain statements that may infringe upon the rights of others under various laws, including those protecting privacy or prohibiting defamation. Providing public comment demonstrates your feelings of engagement and participation in the decision-making process in our community, and we thank you in advance for your public comment. And it looks like we have 2 folks signed up to speak, and I'd like to invite Natalie Herron up.
I'm
Good
doing
evening.
my own volunteering.
I'm gonna get you a nameplate.
I should get my own name tag, like, you know, transportation. I'm just trying to help. So, anyway, let me know when,
You ready now?
okay, let me breathe. I can do this because it's pretty long.
All right, go.
Hi, so I'm Natalie Herron, and I want to say that I wrote this speech, but of course I requested the foyers that will come October 31st or 30th. So according to information obtained through the FOIA request and confirmed by an email from OSPI, a FOIA request from the city, as of June 2023, there is no existing agreement or contract between the public school district and the city of Pullman. Despite my repeated requests for modification and proposal under relevant WAC laws, such as a 60-minute ride regulation, private party contract, which include criminal background check for adults, the RCW regarding transportation efficiency reviews, I have been informed that these regulations do not apply in the absence of a contract. Given that PSD does not currently have a formal agreement and considering that my son lives 1.5 miles from the high school, I want to stress that the provision of bus transportation is a state law requirement. Ensuring transportation for students living beyond 1.5 miles from school is a legal obligation that PSD must uphold to guarantee access to education. This obligation is fundamental, and failure to comply could result in legal challenges or complaint from parents and guardians. In summary, the city bus dues fare are available to students as part of a mobility bill as an addition to mandatory school transportation. In Pullman's case, the layout of the bus system is centered around WSU and not adapted to timely transport students from the high school to Sunnyside Hill in our case. It is compulsory to understand that preteens and teens going onto the city transits are not protected by OSPI laws, which are put in place to protect our youth. This law ensures safety protocols such as background checks for drivers, specific routes designed for students' needs, and accountability measures that are not mandatory for city bus system. For family in areas like Sunnyside Hill, the current bus system is inadequate for getting students to and from school in a timely manner. This could force family to seek alternative transportation or place students in potentially unsafe situation on city transits. As noted by Carl Johansson, that's from the foyer, in an email from May 22, the transportation partnership between Pullman Transit and PSD has been a long-standing one, existing for over 32 years and deeply embedded in our community practice. This historical context underscores the expectation for continued bus service. I'm skipping this. Additionally, the OSPI website indicates a budget for 1,266 students for 23 to 24 school year, with 755 students currently being bused. So if the district is receiving funding based on the number of students, it is important to ensure appropriate funding for the students who live 1.5 miles outside of any schools. It's so low. So the white school bus coming where I live is not city school transportation. And
Natalie.
this is,
Sorry, you're out of time. Thank you.
I know, but it's a lot to take, so.
No, totally understand.
Thank you.
So this is mine. I did not read the blue part, and some are the numbers of the foyers, and hopefully
Thank you,
this
Natalie.
helps.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, next I'd like to ask Beth Ficklin up.
And Beth Ficklin. Go. I just want to finish up what Natalie's saying. What she was saying about the numbers was important. You're getting paid for transporting more students than you're actually transporting. So there is more money coming into the district for transporting those kids that are at that 1.5 miles from the school, and we're expecting that to be transported in that 1.5 miles. On my own, I'd like to say, before you create a cell phone policy, to reach out and talk to students, families, and teachers and try and resolve issues before you create the policy. To my knowledge, there's been no such attempt. Please don't exclude community members from this conversation. It's not fair. Currently, there are other education agencies looking at innovative ways to use AI to provide supports to students with disabilities. So when you start talking about a policy for this, please make sure that you make room to allow AI to support kids, especially since we don't have sufficient staff to fully support students with disabilities in our school district. I have begged for an opportunity to collaborate with the school district through the development of a special education advisory committee, literally in this meeting. This is something that Superintendent Maxwell promised a group of parents he would form in 2019 at one of the first meetings of the Parent Resource Partnership. I am sure he does not recall, but we remember. This has left parents of students with disabilities the only pathways to advocate for systemic change being state-level community complaints, due process claims, and social media. If you're committed to including the community, then work with parents as they have requested. It is lip service to say that as community members, we should communicate through official channels when you refuse to open other pathways in our district. Until a way is created where parents have an actual voice in their students' education, and you're able to close that feedback loop with these parents, these problems with social media and us being upset and having no other avenue to fully communicate with you guys, they're gonna continue to get worse. We are parents who are working with an administration that does not keep its word, trying to get the bare minimum of education for our students, and we are failing. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Okay, that concludes our public comment. Thank you all for coming out this evening to give comment. Next, I'd like to move to the consent agenda. To expedite business at a board meeting, the board approves the use of a consent agenda, which includes items considered to be routine in nature. Any item which appears on the consent agenda may be removed from the consent agenda by a member of the board and voted on separately. The remaining items will be voted on by a single motion. Would anyone like to remove anything from the consent agenda this evening?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. Are there any questions on the motion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, the consent agenda is approved. Next, we'll move to action items, of which we have none, so that'll be real quick. And then we will move to discussion items. The first up being the student cell phone policy presented by Nathan Roberts and Dr. Maxwell. No, I'll go ahead, and then, because you're going to do the bulk of this one. I have quite a few on the docket this evening, so I have to keep room in my brain. Basically, I just wanted to introduce this policy. I know cell phones and internet-connected devices have been the bane of our existence for many years. I've heard countless stories of cell phones, internet-connected devices impeding education throughout the day, impeding student learning, impeding student participation in schools. They have a device, all students in their pockets when they have an internet-connected device that can bring in problems from the outside world. Social media being the obvious example. You know, some student who may not even go to this school is able to comment on another student's profile, and that student, you know, has an issue during the day, a non-school related issue, a non-school building related issue, an issue that is completely outside of the environment that they should be in, which is a learning environment at that time. And so I have, you know, I know all of us have experienced these problems time and time again. I've heard stories from different teachers, different administrators about how cell phones have made their jobs harder, you know, made the students less attentive, made the students harder to engage. And so, you know, when I saw Spokane had passed this policy, I caught wind of it in the initial discussion phases. And so I was very interested to see sort of what they were changing and how they were doing it. They basically took a policy that already existed in our docket, and they added, during their WASDA, edits, which would come out in the policy news, they added some language specifically to Spokane that essentially bans internet-connected devices from schools. And so there are exceptions when you read the policy to, different healthcare needs, different ADA accessibility needs. You know, I know that we had mentioned just in our general discussions, translation devices and devices that help people access communication or speech and so this policy does provide for exceptions for those instances. It also provides for an exception process that parents can go through should they need to, they absolutely have to have a student with a phone. But I do believe that the policy solves and really not solves, but addresses the primary issue of the disruptiveness of phones. And so essentially, and Dr. Maxwell is going to take you through the nuts and bolts of it, but I saw this policy from Spokane and immediately thought, we need this in Pullman Public Schools. And so that's why you find this on the agenda tonight. I'm going to hand this over to Dr. Maxwell to go through the bullets, and then I'm going to make a few more comments, and then we'll move on. So go right ahead.
All right, thank you very much. So again, just a little bit of background. So this draft that we're going to review tonight has revisions from the recently amended Spokane Public School Board of Directors Policy 3245 and Procedure 3245P. Spokane Middle School recently revised the WASDA model language, so I'll be pointing that out as we go through to better address concerns regarding student use of personal devices, impact on the learning environment. The changes reflecting Spokane additions and revisions to the WASDA model policy are going to be blue. So you're going to see red, blue, and black. And so if it's black, it is our current language. If it's red, it's WASDA's proposed language. And if it's blue, it's Spokane's language. So hopefully that helps delineate a little bit where that originated from to help you walk through this policy. I will say at this point, up to this point, our schools have had their own, elementary had their own kind of guidelines with the use of cell phones, middle school had its own guidelines, and the high school. They are not much different from what you're going to see in tonight's policy or procedure. They're fairly close. There are some differences, but fairly close to what is actually in place. Not 100% by any means, but very similar. So, Courtney, could you pull up that policy, please? Oh yeah, I can read that. No, thank you. So if you look at students and telecommunication devices, so They're using the term telecommunication because obviously smartwatches, you can do a lot communication on that, as well as a quote-unquote cell phone, gaming consoles, you name it, a lot of different devices. So I think that's one of the changes you see. The WASDA is red, but you can see Spokane added smartwatches, non-medical listening devices, and headphones, earbuds. I will tell you, in classrooms, you see a lot of that, headphones, earbuds, well, if they're listening to music, how are they, attending to instruction. So it makes it difficult for teachers. They talk about mobile. You can see in their policy a little bit, except for high school, there is some leeway given the age of student groups, so take that into account. Students may access their mobile devices to manage documented medical conditions, because we do have students that do have legitimate medical conditions and or 504 that need to use some type of telecommunication device. So students that have that and need that would still be able to access those telecommunication devices. Students not following district rules regarding acceptable times on mobile devices will have their devices that already happens. When they're not using it correctly, they're confiscated. They're given a warning, then they're confiscated and returned that same school day. Although we've had parents, when they're contacted, say leave them, hold on to them for longer. So repeated offenses may result in required parent guardian meeting to discuss that. We can move down, Courtney. Thank you. Again, you see with the WASA policy, but they're just adding that word mobile or telecommunication or mobile clarifications in this particular policy as you go through the letters here. You can scroll down. And that's the end of the policy, and then the rest of it is all scratched out from the original policy. Now I'd like to go to the procedure. If you could pull that up, please, Courtney. So the procedure obviously goes in more in depth than the policy, but again, this also talks about definitions, which are really important because as things evolve in technology, artificial intelligence, etc. But one of the biggest things is they really pull out digital transmission of sexually explicit content. Number one, because it's illegal, and number two, it has, depending on the age of the student, some very, very impactful results if they are transmitting sexual explicit images. In fact, in Washington state law, some of those become a felony. So that's why you see that is up there first, I think, in their particular definition. Remember, the black is what is currently in WASDA policy and our policy. Okay, mobile device. Again, defining what a mobile device is. And so, again, this was taken from Spokane Public Schools. And this is their definition of a mobile device. So as you reflect on this, that would be one thing to really take a look at. Thank you. Okay, mobile device in the classroom. So again, in this procedure, you're going to see where mobile devices may be not used or used. And so, an example, they talk about mobile device in the classroom. Cell phones, smartwatches, etc. When can they be accessed or operated? In high school, again, and middle school and elementary, they separate those out, which I think is critical because there's different levels of use and or impact given those students. In high school, for example, it talks about being able to use those after school, during passing period, or at lunch, not during classroom instruction, unless it's an emergency or imminent physical danger or an administrator authorizes the student to use the device. Middle school, only before and after, unless there's a medical or emergency situation, et cetera, and then elementary. So it really delineates that, so that would be another piece to take a look at. Students may access their mobile care devices and manage documented medical condition, and we do have those. Obviously, not as they pose a threat or academic integrity, disrupts the learning environment, violates privacy of others. Talks about when a school official has reasonable suspicion, how they can deal with that particular telecommunication device. Students are responsible for those that they bring into school. It's not the district will not be responsible for loss, theft, destruction of devices brought onto school property. Students will comply with any additional rules developed by the school concerning the appropriate use of mobile devices. And students who violate this policy will be subject to disciplinary action. That would then again talks about those offenses, and then we also have a separate disciplinary policy and procedure that would go into specific detail. But this again also shows initial offense. Of course, the student's warned, reminded, so that's making sure they have that conversation. There's also a section if they're repeated, so consistent reminders of the rules, how that tends to then become a little bit more specific to getting parents involved and having more of a defined conversation, and what's the consequence for that, and how do we help educate that student in using it appropriately. Moving down, again, talks about transmission, talks about investigation. The only changes in that were timely investigation, and shall to will, which you'll see change throughout. Some years it's shall, some years it's will, but.
Consistently inconsistent.
Talks a little bit about discipline. You're seeing not a whole lot of major changes in there. Reasonable attempts, assistance when administering, nothing too substantial of that. Again, taking out some language that talks about short-term, out-of-school suspension or in-school suspension. That's covered in the discipline policy. It also talks about second offense, third offense. And that's it. I know the board had talked about also reaching out to staff and to parents and students, so a thought was presenting this as a discussion item tonight, then maybe linking this in a survey, maybe using a Likert scale or something, saying, you know, how much do you support this on a scale from 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, whatever it might be, and maybe, you know, comments supporting this or concerns regarding this policy. We gather a little bit more input from staff or students or parents, so that way you have a little more information. So I think the plan was to at least introduce this tonight and then follow up with a way that constituents and students and teachers could provide some feedback. And we talked about this at the kickoff with staff as well.
And I'd just like to add, and then I'll open it up for questions, 2 things. One, I know that up to this point, we've relied on individual school buildings to enforce their own policies on cell phones, and it's created some problems. And I'll just give you one example. A high school staff member was talking to me about this policy and said that one of the most difficult things they experience enforcing their own cell phone policy in the building is that Lincoln Middle Schools is much more permissive than the high schools. And so the 6th through 8th graders will come here in 9th grade and be like, you know, I have to not use my phone when Lincoln Middle School let me use my phone. Like, what is this? And so there's this, it's not exactly consistent across the district, and it creates discipline problems with students because they don't have consistent expectations, right? So like, it's one school and now I'm older and I'm getting it taken away. And so that was the one kind of key piece of feedback that was brought to me. I've heard nothing really but positive feedback. And then my second little item is, you know, I think with this policy, it would allow us to provide one consistent policy for the entire school district, and it would alleviate the principals and administrators of the burden of having to toe this line on their building, right? Because not only are they fighting their building, they're fighting the policies of all the other buildings that are different, right? So this would give us consistency. My last comment is just the plan, right? So Dr. Maxwell mentioned a little bit about our discussion. I brought this up on a discussion item now, but it is not my intention to bring it back for action next meeting, okay? I would like to wait till the following meeting to bring it back for action. We are mentioning it to staff, we are, giving people, this is sort of a telegraphing move to be like, hey, everyone, we're considering this, please give us your feedback. I would like to do a short survey, nothing major, but just something to gather some feedback. But really, I think giving it a month for people to kind of absorb the idea, for it to spread around, for them to send us their comments, to come in and talk, whatever they want to do, then we'll bring it back in October and see where we're at. So, are there any questions for Dr. Maxwell, myself, anybody?
Just the one thing that kept coming up is till the end of the school day, is that's when the final bell rings. So when they're loading on buses, they're gonna all be talking on their phones, or when they're on buses, so
They
what,
can talk on their phones.
at what point, if the ending bell is the ending bell, we've got some issues after school to also deal with.
Yeah, I think the way that, that could probably be defined if that's something, but, after the ending bell and they're out in the halls, it's the end of the day, I could see them getting on their cell phones.
Well, logistically, if we confiscate it, we have to give it back to them at some point that day.
And that would
so
be on the way
that
out.
would be on the way out to the bus, right? And so I think enforcement becomes very difficult once they leave the building.
Right.
Especially because if they're on a bus, like who's gonna, the bus driver's driving, and so who's gonna be like, turn your phones off, like.
Well, exactly.
That's also when they might need them. I mean, if a parent
Yeah,
sends a message to their kid,
transportation
it might be,
issues.
remember you're going to the dentist, meet me over here.
Well, and I did mention this I've mentioned it to about 20 people randomly, like people I know and ran into, and that was one of the only comments that I kept running across consistently, is we gave our kid a phone for transportation, and he needs to be able to use it. And I was like, totally use it, because it's not in our policy. And so I totally hear you. I think for the learning disruption, this solves it. It's not the whole solution, you know
That's
what I
true.
mean? Like, cause
Yeah.
but like the learning issue, this is a good stab at it. The rest of it, I agree. Like, there's still gonna be issues with discipline around phones, even in the school day, right? But this would give everyone the ability to be like, not my choice, you just have to do it, right? Whereas now they're fighting individual, like, battles,
Right.
But that's a really good point, Gregor.
And the confiscation piece, if the screen is cracked and they give it to us, but then we give it back to them and say, this wasn't cracked beforehand, so
That's a good
that
question.
condition of how we accepted it also has to be kind of factored in there so that they're
That's
not
a good question.
blaming us on breaking all
I see
their.
you've run a school before.
Well, the one that I hated was the kids are waiting for their parents to pick them up, and they're calling their mom saying, school's out, where are you, where are you, where are you? Well, I'm stuck in traffic, I'll be there in 10 minutes, but, and then by the time mom gets there, she's mad, kid's mad, everybody's mad, rather than just saying, okay, just be patient and wait 10 minutes.
I don't know if we can solve that with a policy.
I know,
think it's just
that's way bigger than,
Kid
yeah,
transportation.
yeah.
Well, and I will add, that the other thing that we also included and we've sent out in communications is the OSPI guidelines regarding cell phones that has come out recently. That may even be a discussion at the legislative level, possibly this long session. Not sure. I've heard rumors of that maybe. I don't know how much traction it will really get, but some states are moving that direction, so. I know Lisa had sent some questions today. I did not have time. I apologize.
Yeah, is
to
it
get
okay
to
if I
that.
summarize that for
Sure.
people, just so maybe I could get some
Absolutely.
feedback? I just had a few questions in reading through it. Probably the biggest picture one for me is just feeling like this policy is pretty dense for something that people are going to be really curious about, or even trying to assess regularly, like, oh, can I send my kid with, should I get them that new watch, or does that violate the policy? And so one thing in particular that I think makes it a little bit intimidating is, and I know this is from the model policy, but mixing in some of the content questions, in particular sort of the, like, sexual messaging, like, that is more of a content question, when a lot of what else we're regulating is more of a time question and when they can access things as opposed to what they're accessing. So that would be one thing I just wanted to bring up, that I feel like it could be an easier policy for people to read and access if we kind of separated the when you can use it and what devices from some of the other instances that are more about the content. especially since some of that's also in other policies in various ways. So I don't know that that's a major thing, especially if we were trying to stick with the model policies, but then I think if we are sticking with all of it together, we need to create a really clear messaging, like simple messaging for families that doesn't require going through all of the.
Well, I love your idea, and what I was actually just thinking is, what if we were to take the meat, the actual statement of, no more phones, these 3 schools, first paragraph, A,
Yeah.
right? And then everything else below it is all of the stuff.
That's more the like,
But they can only, they read the first paragraph and they get the gist of it, right? And then everything else is like, situational and random content, and this is what happens when you get caught. But the first page, first paragraph is really where
Yeah.
we can just be like, we'll focus on making that one explain exactly what we're doing, and then,
Maybe
is
that-
that?
Well, anytime you have suggestions of how you want to break that out or separate something out so it's a little bit more clear, or a bullet point, if you want to send that to Courtney or I, we can take a shot at incorporating that and then bringing it back for more discussion, saying, how does this look? So anytime that you think, you have a suggestion for wording or structure of that, we can take a look at putting that in there and then taking a look at it as a group and saying, does this make more sense, or that's part of that policy development,
Okay.
procedure development, so.
I do think if we could kind of funnel it so it's like the top of the policy applies to the greatest number of people, and then it kind of goes down to the more specific and less common cases, that
Yeah,
would be
because
helpful.
we can structure it any way we really want. So, if this isn't what we want, we can take a look. So if you have suggestions, please feel free to, and we could send this to you, in a Word document, you can do it, or just send us the content and we can work on it.
Yeah, and then I think the only other question that I would raise now, just for, as we get feedback and everything too, and I've been talking to a lot of people about this, and it has been really positive. I think people have brought up the questions about emergencies and uses, legitimate uses, like with IEPs, and I'm really glad, that's addressed in it, which is really nice to be able to say. And then the one thing I didn't totally see, or felt like it was a little unclear, is whether individual teachers could allow the use of devices in classes, mostly thinking of the high school where they're allowed to access them between classes for specific educational purposes. I'm thinking of something like, I don't know if this is accurate, but like a CTE class where you're demonstrating a process and a student benefits from being able to take a video of that process on their phone so they can study it later or something. Would a teacher be able to have the authority to say, yes, in this particular case, it fits our curricular needs and you can do that? Because I'd want to make sure that we're providing that sort of flexibility.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a pickle. Because it's also like, why can't the teacher just send them a video in their email and they can access it on their district Chromebook, right?
Well, then the teachers have to record the videos. We're already asking teachers if they're demonstrating something. I think there are ways around it, but,
No, I get you.
Yeah.
The spirit of the point is well taken. No, I get it. Like that.
I think, what you were saying earlier, devices have absolutely become a distraction. That's true for all of us. I also, in my own teaching, I use smartphones all the time. This is with college students. It's a different level. But we are always using these for, taking pictures or being able to engage through different apps and stuff. And I think you can teach well without that if necessary, but I don't want to preclude innovative teaching or
Don't
helping
throw
students.
the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak.
Yeah, I would like to give teachers agency to at least advocate for, in this case, it was useful and it aided teaching.
No, good point. So I think actually hearing your thoughts, Lisa, and thank you for sharing. I'd like to bring it back for discussion next time, but not for action. And so we'll see the changes that you just discussed. I would like to I was already kind of thinking of some, but I wanted to look at the raw policy first, right? So I might make a few, and then we'll bring it back next time for discussion again. We will discuss again and look at the revisions, and then I think we'll further revise. And then that way we can bring it back the next time as action, and we've seen it multiple times. Because I don't want to wait for a month and then we're editing it again, right? So I think, does that sound good? Is everybody good with that? Okay. Yes.
I just had a couple things. I think Lisa made some really good points. In addition, I think that we need to be certain that we update whatever we decide to do in our handbooks. so
Oh,
that's
yeah.
consistent, because that's another place that parents might look for the meat of the policies. And honestly, I was a little bit concerned to see the part where the high schoolers could have it during passing periods and lunch. So I'm not sure how the rest of the board feels about that, but I think that that can equally be an educational distraction. If they pull up, something during lunch that's upsetting, then how are they gonna focus on their next period if somebody said that they look fat in their outfit or something? So I'm kind of not certain that I love that part. So I just wanted to bring that up.
And
Yes, correct.
I mean, this kind of goes into the AI conversation too, that these are tools, if we're preparing kids to be successful in future learning and in the world of work, these are tools that are going to be available to them in that place. And they'll have their own rules. If you're working a factory job, you can't just answer the phone anytime you want. But during their breaks, whatever, they would. So, I mean, there's that, our purpose here isn't to keep us in education without cell phones. I mean, cell phones is part of that. So, but teaching them, just like we do with computers, appropriate use, appropriate, I think that is a big part of what our charge is. But just to say, no, we can't have them at all. I mean, I don't know. Because I see the distractions in every school and everything, and it's significant.
No, I hear you.
Yeah, but
I
that's-
totally agree. And it's, honestly, for me, it's sort of like, it's hard to have the one without the other, right? Like, it's hard to have the positive educational benefits without the, because for instance, teacher's like, hey, we want to do a quick video, and you pick it up, and it's already given me 7 notifications, all of my Facebook messages, right? And so it's like, how do you unpack all of that from the use you want them to have in the classroom, right? Which is like, oh, I just wanted you guys to watch this YouTube video, and now you're watching, like other YouTube videos you shouldn't be watching. And so like, I just will give you one example from my own personal life that was very recent, actually. It was last week, and my daughter was in her 5th grade class, and she had planned a sleepover, right? This is a long story, but she had planned a sleepover, and the parent and I had contacted each other, and it didn't work out for us that night, right? And my daughter was really excited about the sleepover. She had been planning the whole thing. She had all these plans. And so before I could even talk to my daughter, the mom had texted the child and said, no more sleepover. And then the child had told my daughter, no more sleepover. And then, long story short, there was an episode, okay? And I got a text message from the teacher saying, hey, what's going on? And I was like sitting there, and this, like I said, was only last week, so this is not the impetus for the policy, but I was like, this is a perfect example of why, like, that didn't need to be there, right? Because, like, it interrupted her whole school day. I picked her up, and she was like, why? Like, it was a whole thing, for hours. And I'm like, wow, all this happened because I didn't get to explain to you first that it was only a scheduling issue and we were going to do it tomorrow, right? But instead, she let it waste her whole day, right? Like, to a point where the teachers are messaging me, And so I look at that, and I'm like, we're not teaching them anything in that environment. And so we should at least take away cell phones so we can teach them. And then, yes, we need to teach them responsible use. But for me right now, looking at the situation objectively, I don't know how you unpack those two, right? Like, I really don't. And I mean, if I hear from a bunch of teachers saying, oh, we can do it, we're confident, you just don't know. I'm like, cool. But I don't know. It's a pickle.
But I'm not sure the teachers want that responsibility either.
Yeah, I don't think we have to. I would like to just have sort of procedure so that if a teacher wanted to be able to allow the use of smartphones for some purpose in their class, for something that related, we would have, say, like, we've thought it through, here's what you need to do to allow that.
Would it be like an acceptable educational use,
Yeah.
for instance? So like, what if they just didn't like the policy, and they're like, well, students can use cell phones in my class? Because I
That
think
sounds
they're-"
like a Bob problem to me.
Okay, so we would have to be some sort, I like that answer too, but it would have to be some sort of like, there would have to be some sort of review of the use, right? Like, so like someone would have to be like, oh, that's an acceptable use, or not.
I think you'd have to define acceptable
Right,
educational
a
use.
teacher-directed use, or just anything you think might be helpful?
Yeah.
But I would also say it should be occasional.
Yeah.
Well, see, and that's where we're getting like, we're all on this like, oh,
Yeah,
well,
well,
you know.
I'd like to get teacher feedback on that and student feedback on it. I mean, I wouldn't see that coming up in most classes, but, you know, if there's a class where you're doing something like yearbook or something, like, you might not have enough cameras for all the students, but they all have cameras in their backpacks. That seems like a lost educational opportunity to like, you know, be able to do that, right?
No, and
So-
I totally agree. I mean, that's kind of where I'm warring here, and I totally feel you. I mean, I think y'all are too. Is it overbearing to be like, you could have an acceptable use if you fill out a little piece of paper and had like the principal approve it or something, or is that just too much? Like that goes into the educational philosophy and the,
You know, I would say, just off the top of my head in this moment, I'd say that's probably too much. You know, I think, you know, teachers are professionals and teachers make 1,000 decisions in a day. And so I think if, with the academic, if it's educationally related to whatever essential standard they're addressing or academic content item, I think that's something to take a look. I do think it needs to be occasional with anything, with any policy or rule. If people aren't consistent with it,
Yeah,
then
that's
it's
right.
gonna become a problem.
because they might as well not exist.
Yeah,
Because
or,
they're not, we're just-
you know, you can sometimes see it like, well, in that class you get to use them, but in this class you don't. I mean, so, I think there's valid points on both sides, and I think it's something to really be thinking about what that would look like or what it should look like. But I think we need to be consistent and would need to be pretty defined tightly. And I think, and I know, because I listened to some of the Spokane conversations, they had that exact same conversation over and over again. Because if you remember, they kept taking it back, then they were gonna action, nope, went back for discussion, went back for, and I know a lot of it was on that academic piece. And you know, they do have computers that we can do a lot of that academic piece on, which is very similar to a cell phone, what you can do. So maybe it's another tool, or I think further discussion probably would be good to have on that, so.
It's sort of like how schools all had laser discs, but everyone else had DVDs.
Yeah.
It's like, they're similar.
Wow.
Oh.
Speaking of bad choices, before smartphones existed, I used to skip lunch in high school to go use the computer in the library, because, yeah, you had a break in classes and you wanted to go use the internet instead. So, I mean, some of it we can't control every aspect of that, like, if we're trying to guide everyone to the best choices that.
I know, we have to, trust that they will take the rest of the path, right? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and end this, unless there are any other questions. We're gonna bring it back next time as discussion item with some revisions. We'll basically just look at it again. We'll talk about the revisions that are made, and then hopefully, is there a possibility we could have some sort of quick staff survey out by then? Or is that logistically too?
We'll work on it.
Okay, let me know.
Depends what happens tomorrow.
No problem. But we'll work on getting, I'm kind of hoping to slow roll this to get that very feedback, right? So like, as people hear us discussing it or talk about it, then they can send in messages or do whatever, so, yes.
Could we just end this discussion by, if people are like listening to this later, or like other folks, like the best way to give us their feedback?
Oh, yeah, just email board@psd267.org, or any one of us, nathan.roberts@psd267.org. We can email Bob. You can go on our social media and it'll go through Parent Square Courtney, I think we have multiple avenues of feedback. Is there anything else that I should mention?
We'll work on getting something put together, so.
And just to clarify too, next meeting would be discussion again, so that would be a good time for public comment on this if people.
That was
have
exactly my
comments.
intent,
Okay.
right, is we put it out once for discussion, we get public comment again maybe, and then if any of that results in changes, we'll have another opportunity to action item it, so. Because it's, getting public comment and then making changes in the same meeting and then improving it is too much. Are there any other final questions? Okay, thank you all very much, I appreciate the discussion. Next, we're gonna go to community listening session planning. This is also me, this one will be really quick though. So, we all had our work session last week. I really enjoyed Jay Marie coming out and talking to us about, different ways to discuss with the community, things that are hard to discuss, right? I really liked her idea about the listening sessions. I heard from you all that you kind of liked it too. And so, We went ahead and preemptively kind of scheduled one, right? So we don't know what that's going to look like, though. And so this is why we're discussing it. So basically, we went ahead and went for October 18th, 16th. Oh, I just inverted that, yep. Okay, so October 16th, which is our only available Wednesday, right, is tentatively scheduled for a listening session. Now, if we all hate that, we can reschedule, but I thought it was okay to like put it in the books, right? So my goal for this would be so first of all, we will hopefully have a J. Marie meeting virtually to talk to her about questions about planning, right? So before that October listening session, I'm hoping to have a conversation with J. Marie virtually on how those goes and if she has any recommendations on it. But essentially I was thinking exactly like she said. We all 5 go. We come prepared to speak on the topics or listen mostly, right? We all sit in this room in different places and we let people just come and talk to us, right? I'm thinking aquatic center, I'm thinking transportation, and I'm thinking district facilities and improvements. So anything else that people have that they want to contribute about facilities. And the reason I was going through a whole list of topics, I chose these because they're similar, you know, so they're all capital facilities, kind of community stuff. And also we're looking at renegotiating the interlocal agreement soon, with the aquatic center included, and with transportation included, and with other capital improvements probably, right? So this would all be mostly, the big theme would be gathering community feedback about the facilities that we provide to the community, right? Aquatic center, transportation, other facilities. And by other, I mean like the gyms, the parks, the, you know, because like Sunnyside is used by the community members. Buildings that are used by the community members. There's been requests from the city to do additional construction on our properties, you know what I mean? So there's a lot going on there. Yeah, basically we would all kind of brush up on the 3 topics beforehand. We would all sit in the room, we would all listen, and then following that, we would then proceed first with the aquatic center, right? Like, because I think that is the most urgent kind of immediate, we need to know what we want to do. And then we would go to, you know, what we find out about transportation and then any other sort of capital things. Because that third one is really my attempt to tease out things we don't know about, right? So like, hey, you know, you're really worried about the gym or you really want a pickleball court, you know, like, I don't know. But that one is more of a, what would you like to see the school provide kind of stuff. So are there any initial thoughts before, and Dr. Maxwell, do you have anything to contribute as well?
No, I think that pretty sums it up pretty well, what we had talked about.
Are we talking about doing that sequentially, or sort of the people rotate around tables model, the rotating?
I think, if I recall correctly, I think J. Marie had mentioned a model where the board members stay where they're at and then the public rotate.
I think that would be really nice. We brought up the question once before of how we record minutes or participation for something like that, so I don't know if that's resolved or if she has recommendations.
Honestly, that's exactly what I'm wanting to meet with her for, is stuff like that. Like, do we all pick a topic? You know, like asking her stuff like that. Is it better to each of us pick one, or do we all just be like, hey, talk to each of us about all 3, you know? Because I can see good and bad in both, you know? So yeah, those are exactly what we're hoping to get clarification on before we have it, is like, yeah, how do you, you know, what's the best way to organize it? What's the best way to kind of, you know, go about your business? And so, yeah, we'll definitely add that on there. Yeah, please go in and Amanda.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I just, while it's on my mind.
No,
One
please.
thing I didn't get to say in our session with J. Marie is like, I feel very comfortable like with people whose opinions differ from mine. What does get irritating for me is when there are facts and we don't agree on the facts, or when there's misconceptions and we're getting feedback on something that is based on just a lack of information. These do strike me as important topics, but also ones where there are a lot of like misconceptions out there about how things work or who's responsible for what, because I could tell you that a year ago I couldn't tell you about any of these things accurately.
That's
You know,
also
just from
why I
living
picked
in the
these
community.
topics, because I think
So-
we can contribute a lot back to their questions,
But I
right?
think, yeah, so I would love to do something where if we are doing this, I would love to have like a fact sheet on each topic, or something that really starts with sort of a shared set of facts before we get into discussion.
I love that idea. And actually, I was already thinking something very similar. I was gonna make a crib sheet for all of us.
Yeah.
And just be like, okay, these are your top, basically the exact thing Dr. Maxwell printed out for the Aquatic Center for the history of it, right? And then just a few more bullets on the current events, and then here's your thing, right? And you're like, oh yeah, we've had this since, you know, that way we can all kind of speak intellectually, be prepared, you know, and not just be like, oh, that's interesting. You know?
Yeah, we're like,
Um,
I don't think that's right, but
yeah,
I'm not totally sure. Yeah, okay.
I guess we'll have to agree to disagree, you know, that,
We shouldn't have to disagree about like the date something started. Like that's,
oh, we have to agree to disagree that gravity exists, okay, so it's a difficult world these days. Oh, yes, Amanda, sorry.
So I recall her saying that we would have maybe like 15-minute sessions with a
Mhm.
5-minute switching period, and then afterwards, we would have like an hour meeting where we share with each other
Oh,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
what we learned, and I think that that would kind of be the minutes portion of
That's
that
a good point.
situation. So I don't know how we schedule that.
I like, yeah, thank you for mentioning that, because that actually, that puts our 2 hours into nice perspective. And honestly, if we did all three, we could all talk about all three, and then we just shift, 15 minutes, 15 minutes, 15 minutes. Because what I like about all 5 of us doing one topic is if there's a lot of people that happen to show up, we can give them individual attention. You know what I mean? Because like, they're not all like mobbing the aquatic center table and nobody's at the transportation table. And so, or I doubt that'll happen, but you know what I mean? And so, you know, that was my argument for doing all of them, but I was honestly gonna be like, Jay, what do you know, what have you seen work well, right? Like, because I will acknowledge it's a lot of information on those 3 just alone, you know? But yeah, I think that's sort of the plan. Let me know, you know, are y'all cool with the topics, basically? Is that a good, okay, because I mean, it kind of fit with our current events, and it also kind of fit with our long-term planning needs, and so I thought it was a good.
Well, we also need to make sure that date works for everybody too.
Yes, that is another thing. Let us know if that Wednesday doesn't work. We kind of picked the Wednesday because it was like, we know you got Wednesdays free sometimes, right? So hopefully it works, but if it doesn't work, let us know and we can because we haven't really announced it to anyone yet. We just kind of booked it for, you know, kind of tentative planning. So are there any other questions? This is all good stuff, so awesome. Okay, Dr. Maxwell, you good?
Yep.
Okay, next, it's Nathan Roberts again.
Sure is.
I told you guys we'd have a lot of discussion items. And it's funny because Courtney was like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, no, they're all me. Courtney, don't worry about it. Okay, so I registered September 5th for the WASDA General Assembly. I wanted to basically talk to you guys tonight a little bit about how General Assembly works, what it is, what we do, and then what I need from you, right? And so, and just back to my original point at the beginning of the meeting, this is not an action item, this is just a discussion item. We won't be bringing this back for action. If there's ever anything that you all want to talk about that doesn't have to necessarily have an action item, but it's just a topic, like this is how we would proceed, right? So we put it up there, you put a little statement, and then we would talk. So Courtney, do you mind opening the attachment, the handbook? Thank you very much. Okay, so I emailed this handbook out to y'all about a week ago. Basically, General Assembly is the period, and I'm just going to talk briefly about what it is. Annually, the school directors from across the entire state, all of their legislative reps, who is me for our board, assemble together to vote on our policy proposals for the next year, right? And that General Assembly handbook contains all of the policy proposals that are under discussion or will be voted on during that period. And so this determines the legislative advocacy agenda of WASDA. It determines all of our model policies, right? So like it circles back to our model and then we put them in the district. And so it is a very impactful situation for our board directly, right? And so basically we meet, it's a virtual hybrid situation, but there's one voting delegate. I had to register to be the voting delegate. You may all attend if you like. You can't vote, because I'm the voting delegate, unless I say, hey, do you want to, and we can talk if you really want to vote, right? But basically, I would go to this thing, and I would vote on what is best for our school district, right? So that's usually how I've proceeded with this, with the caveat that I want you to review the book and tell me if you have strong feelings on anything, right? Because I'm voting on all of these to what I believe is the best interest of our school district and what our board would want, right? But that's an assumption. And so generally, you know, I think the assumptions are pretty good, but some of the policies in there are a little different, a little interesting, right? And just because like we vote on them doesn't make them policies, right? We would vote, it goes on to the legislative advocacy agenda, and then all of the, you know, state senators and legislators see it, and then this is their playbook for education policy, right? So there's a whole thing that goes on after this. But this document carries a tremendous amount of weight because it is voted on by every school district in the state. So it is the manifestation of our political will, right? So back to the book. Courtney, do you mind just cruising through to the table of contents? We're not going to go through the whole thing. But so basically in here you have everything that you would ever want to know about legislatively. The only thing that I really need you to just passively look at, you don't need to like, in-depth read. You can, don't let me dissuade. But all I really want is from page 27 to 118 are every one of the policies that we will be voting on. Now, you don't need to tell me a yay or nay on any of them, or all of them, rather. But if there are any that you're like, man, I super love this one, this is great, or this is horrible, like do not, under any circumstances, vote for that. That's really what I'm looking for, right? Send me an email by next Thursday, because it happens on Friday, right? Just send me an email saying, hey, I'd really appreciate it if you didn't vote for this one, or definitely vote for that one. That's all I'm looking for. And if you see them and you're like, do whatever you think is best, totally happy with that too. But I wanted to give you all, because we have 3 new members, and I may not, know you all as well as our previous one, so I don't know exactly what you would want. So I would say, like, I sent it to you a week ago, hoping that you would have a little time, but I didn't think you would really know what to do with it, because you're like, what's this? So I figured I'd put it on and be like, that's what it is. But yeah, we basically have them broken out into big topics, right? So you have operations, which are more WASDA stuff. Capital facilities and school construction, I recommend you pay attention to. Funding and allocations is always a big deal. Governance, learning, staff, all the proposals are bucketed accordingly. So just check it out. Like I said, much or as little attention as you want, but I wanted to give you the opportunity. But I will be voting on these Friday and Saturday. Last year, we spent 6 hours on the number 1. It was awful. Like, I really wanted to claw my eyes out. I was like, oh my gosh. I'm sitting, because I work remotely, so I'm sitting there all day anyway, and I'm spending my whole day off that I took to sit here and watch us argue about them. Oh, anyway, hopefully it goes better. We did vote through all of them, but it ended up being like Saturday into the evening by the time we were done, because we spent, and it was a bylaw change, and so it was awful. Like, it was, because anyway, like when you're voting on these, the way it works is they get up and they read it, and then people can come to the speaker, or you basically designate on LinkedIn, or not LinkedIn, but Zoom, and then you get 3 fors and 3 against. And so they'll read the position, and then 3 fors get to read, and 3 against gets to read, and then we get to argue about it, and then we vote on it, right? And so they do this 115 times generally. And so it's a process, right? But long story short, that's my only reason I'm saying that is if you see these things but want amendments, right? Like, oh, I really love this, but what is that thing? Please include that as well, because there is an opportunity to say, hey, I would vote on this as amended, right, with these amendments, and then it's a whole circular. Because it's funny, because I think during the 6-hour bylaws, we got, I think it was 7 deep in amendments and then motions, to where they were like, I make a motion, and then I make an amendment, and then we went in, and then it was motion amendment, and then it was motion amendment, and then it was motion amendment. And so we had to vote our way back out of it. And then, oh man, it was amazing. Like democracy in action, right? But anyway, please read, please review. If you see things that you're like, what is this? Let me know, I'll do my best to kind of help. I'm pretty familiar with the process, because I had the pleasure of kind of running one of these with them one year. Yeah, it was fun. But no, just let me know by Thursday. And if you want to join, just let me know, because I can send you a link and you can participate. So I'll even let you vote a little bit if you want to. So I just have to pass the card over to you.
It made it sound really fun.
It is. It can be. Okay. Last year was not fun, but the previous years have been fun. It was a lot.
Your last chance.
I think that's about it on the proposals. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Okay, just let me know if, like I said, you have any thoughts on the positions. And now, I will relinquish the floor finally. I would like to call Justin Polstead up for Resolution 242503, final acceptance of Lincoln Middle School addition and renovation.
Hello again. I was here yesterday. We are looking to I'm going to combine these and we can separate them if you would like. I think it was D&E for Kamiak and Lincoln, the final acceptance. Yes, those beautiful buildings we've been in for a couple years now, there's a little bit of paperwork that needs to be finished on them. We've got it, it's in your packet from Design West. We've got a couple things that need to be signed. Any questions on either one of those?
So we didn't close Kamiak.
We did not.
That's interesting. Okay, thank you. I was glad
Yeah.
I'm glad you checked.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any questions for Justin? All right, thank you very much, sir.
Mhm.
That's a lot quicker than ours. Gosh.
I got more.
Oh, it still keeps coming.
Oh, you got declaration of
Actually-
surplus property.
Actually, you need, okay, yeah, never mind.
Resolution 242505.
You're good.
He did both of them.
I
So
did.
That's what he said, yeah.
That's okay.
Oh, totally fine.
Okay,
I'm with you.
great.
It's gonna be tomorrow before.
Am I okay to go to the next one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the next one is surplus sale stuff, right? So that time of year, we'd like to run a surplus sale of items deemed no longer needed by the district. We'd follow the protocol and put an ad in the newspaper. We'd go to allow public and private schools to have kind of first go at things, and then we'd turn it over to the public in general. And we'd like to do that in the coming months or so. We'd like to do that.
Are there any questions for Justin on the surplus?
I do. So the gym will be empty after this?
The gym is almost empty right now. It's very close. This would include some things that are out in storage as well.
Okay,
So including a bus, desk, cabinet, shelving,
yeah.
and
Thank
a
you for
bus.
doing
It's pretty
that.
much all of Bob's furniture.
Pretty
Yeah,
much.
yeah,
Plus 350 desks that we
yeah.
probably don't need.
You don't
This
need all that.
isn't time sensitive for
No.
us to, okay.
It's not time sensitive, no.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank
Are there
you.
any other questions for Justin? All right, Justin, feel free to proceed to 6220, bid or request for proposal requirements.
Thank you. Yes, so this is a WASDA update. As Nate said, bid or request for proposal requirements. So we're updating policy to follow along with that. For me, what I gathered, kind of the 5 main points of this that we're looking that this incorporates is maximizing the use of district resources, making sure that the need of sound business practices in spending public money, that we're following that as well. The requirement of complying with state and federal laws governing purchasing of items, the importance of standardized purchasing regulations, and the need for clear documentation. This kind of follows a little bit of what we discussed maybe a couple meetings ago when we discussed food purchasing, and it's similar in some of these things where we could do a little bit of that piggyback on some other things by following other districts with some agreements that they have in place already.
Are there any questions for Justin on the bid or request for proposal requirements?
Nope.
Okay, thank you very much, Justin.
Thank you.
Appreciate you hanging in there with us.
Absolutely.
All right, next we'll move to informational items. Informational items do not require action or discussion by the board. The items are included in the agenda for the board to review and may be moved to the discussion items section of the board agenda by any board member. Informational items may include board procedure updates and non-substantive policy updates. Would anyone like to remove any informational items this evening? Okay. In that case, we will move straight to executive or closed session. We do have one this evening, correct?
We do, we have performance of a public employee or employees.
Okay, and how long do you think?
Estimate 10 minutes.
Okay, so that is 8:49. Let's say 8:50, just to give us a minute to.
Yeah,